Welcome back to the Forum Book Club. We're here all sheltering in place. Vivian at her lovely home here in San Francisco. I'm at our office. We're sheltering in the office here. And Joseph, I presume you're in South Carolina. Is that right?
Sheltering in my home in South Carolina, yes.
All right. Well, we're going to begin discussing this week the book Sex and the Catholic Feminist by Sue Ellen Browder. Let me put that up again so you can see that. It's a very lovely cover. I want to say this was a cover not done by one of our normal people to do our covers for Ignatius Press. This was done by Augustine Institute, and I think it's a phenomenal job. I think that really is a very beautiful cover for this book. It's basically, and you two can fill in or correct this. I mean, Sue Ellen Browder, who was a secular feminist for many years and wrote for Magazine, Cosmopolitan, she had a conversion and still wants to promote the dignity of women and women's rights, but she feels that the name feminist now has been hijacked by secular forces, and she wants to kind of recapture that name, because there's a place for a Catholic feminism. Am I summarizing okay?
I think that's pretty good, Father. And if I can just maybe have a quick word before we dive and delve into the text, just to talk about the structure of the discussion, because
Yes.
we are planning to have 4 weeks on this book, the entirety of the month of April. So we're going to spend 3 weeks discussing the book. And then on the fourth week, the author herself, Sue Ellen Browder, will be joining us. So that will be the 28th of April. So mark that in your calendar now. And basically, we'll be dividing the book into 3/3, not 2/3 or 4/3, but 3/3.
All right. And right now we're taking the introduction in chapters 1 and 2. I want to point out that the introduction, she describes her conversion back to the Catholic faith and to sanity in the relationship of women and men. But it happens that it was on a trip she made here to San Francisco to the West Coast Walk for Life. Mm-hmm. And in our office at Ignatius Press, our very own Eva Montaigne, along with Dolores Meehan, were the co-foundresses of the West Coast Walk for Life 15 years ago. And so there's been many fruits from that Walk for Life. It's a great blessing for everyone. Over 50,000 people come every year into San Francisco, the heart of the beast. And it's such a wonderful moment where you have young people and old people and lots of different ethnic groups there. You really see the Catholic Church at its finest, and the speakers are phenomenal. And so it's a great thing that was that experience of the West Coast Walk for Life that led to the conversion of this wonderful, wonderful Catholic woman.
And if I could say that, Father Rod, I remember, I go back far enough with Ignatius Press to remember when it was being started. And I must confess, it's the coward in me. I thought, well, a walk for life in the middle of San Francisco sounds like a recipe for disaster on all sorts of levels. But I'm absolutely delighted to have been proven wrong. And here we are, 15 years on, with a great witness of that annual event, and this particular practical and incarnate witness here with this wonderful author who was moved towards her final step to conversion through her experience of that.
That's right. The first one, Joseph, was the very first Walk for Life was pretty wild. There was quite a violent opposition who were kept away from the walkers by the quick-thinking, hardworking San Francisco Police Department. But they did try all kinds of silly things like blocking the streets and all that. But every walk since then has been mostly uneventful in that way. Just the numbers of counter protesters and so on being very minimal. So The first year was a little dicey at moments.
That was the year
Sorry.
when our mayor, the now governor of California, Gavin Newsom, declared that day Reproductive Health Day or something like that, and staged a counter rally on the same day. And we had the mayor of the city, with a very liberal city, and they had a few hundred people at their rally. We had 3,000 at ours.
Right. And here the irony, Gavin Newsom, born and raised Catholic education all the way through university. He says that the Jesuits made him everything he is today.
Well, that's probably true.
And here's Sue Ellen Browder, raised a Presbyterian or Methodist or something, and becoming a Catholic and embracing the pro-life vision. You know, it's an interesting, God works in surprising ways.
Now, I have one bone to pick with her that probably comes from her liberal roots that still has kind of tainted her. On page 18, at the top, she says, I'm convinced that pro-life family feminism, already well organized at the grassroots level, will be unstoppable in the years ahead if all women and men, Democrats and Republicans alike, stop fighting, pull together, and recognize we're all working toward the same goals. Well, I'm sorry, but we're not going to get the present Democratic Party with its platform ever reconciling with family pro-life feminism.
I think, though, Father, to be fair to her rhetoric, she says just above Democrats and Republicans, if all women and men, so first of all, there's an if, there's a qualifier there, but also all women and men. Obviously, she's not really expecting all women and men to be on board. And I doubt that she expects the Democratic Party to be on board. But I think it's a call for action, regardless of where we are in the political spectrum, to respect the dignity of the human person. I think that it may be wishful thinking, but it's noble thinking.
Yes.
It's noble, but go ahead, Vivian.
Well, I was just going to say that sort of bubbly optimism runs throughout this text. And I think it's probably in part because of her own conversion being such a surprise. I think that sort of lends people to being optimistic about what the possibilities are when they themselves have done a complete 180-degree turn.
Good.
Anything can happen, right?
I will.
Yeah, I think she is in that. I think she's full of joy. I think that
Yes.
she really has converted to the Catholic faith, and she is so full of joy because of that. And I think it overspills.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I've been full of joy too, like the Song of Roland. I don't mind dying in battle, but I just want to make sure I'm going to fight to the end.
Just don't lead everybody else into a losing battle. I mean, that was not real courage, but maybe something else.
That's true. I mean, I will basically, I think I will add a little Augustinian counterpoint to some things in the book, because bubbly optimism is not what I'm known for.
Well, and I think in fairness to Father, she does acknowledge the Marxist roots. Feminism, that very poignant scene between Betty Friedan and Simone de Beauvoir. How do you say her name?
De Beauvoir.
De Beauvoir. Thank you.
De Beauvoir.
That very poignant scene between these two feminists, and one still thinking she can have the family component,
right.
And the other being very clear that no, the family must be destroyed. There are elements, and Joseph knows this very well, ideologically, that are beneath the surface of what we call feminism that aren't necessarily capable of being completely rooted out. What do you think, Joseph?
Well, I mean, insofar as radical feminism is Marxist to the core, then it's basically dead to us to the core. The only good news is, being more optimistic perhaps than Father would like me to be, is that Marxism is ultimately self-destructive. I mean, it's its own worst enemy, and every time it becomes successful, it cuts its own throat. So it's maybe not going away, but neither is it taking over. One thing I would say in a positive sense about this, for me, speaking subjectively, I always say that the United States history began at 9/11 because I moved to the United States 4 days before that, and my ignorance of U.S. history prior to my arrival. Obviously, I've been here since then, but prior to that, my ignorance is such that this book was very useful to me because it filled in all sorts of historical gaps from the 20th century.
Yes, there are a lot of historical gaps, and she is very good at bringing those to the fore, because I think for a lot of people, they don't know who the early feminists were.
Right.
They were informed by Christian faith, even if it was a bit antinomianism, the Quakers and so on. The fact is, these were Christian women, Susan B. Anthony, and she mentions these. She starts mentioning these on page 27 or 26. The pro-life Christians fighting for the vote. That's a very informative little section of the book.
It is. No, it is. Well, we've jumped into chapter 1. I'll just take the last sentence she says at the end of her introduction. She says, it's time to take back our story. And so
Yes.
that she wants to restore true feminism, and she's going back to the roots to show what it was at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Although
she talks about feminism taking a Y turn and taking the left turn in that Y turn and then actually becoming derailed. So, but up until that Y turn, what she's claiming is this is social history, feminism that Christians and Catholics can embrace. It's only when that Y turn is taken, when they take that radical secularist Marxist direction, that it goes off the rails.
Right. That is her argument, and I think that it's one worth making, if only to let people know that the word feminism is a much broader thing than what a lot of people think it is.
right. I mean, we have to stop the destruction of language somewhere. I mean, they've taken the rainbow from us. They've taken the word gay from us. I mean, let's not continue destroying good words and good realities, especially the rainbow. I mean, that's a sign of the Noachic covenant, God's sign in the sky.
Right. I was so surprised. I knew about some of these early feminists. What I did not know was that Margaret Sanger opposed abortion. That's made known on pages 30 and 31.
Right, 29 originally.
That it wasn't until a man took over Planned Parenthood that they ended up adopting the abortion. And as we're going to see later in her story, I already know where the story is going because Ignatius Press previously published a fuller account in the book Subverted. And this is kind of an abridged version. So I already know where she's going, but that was a shocker to me. I did not realize Margaret Sanger opposed abortion when she found
it was a surprise to me too. And also in that same passage on page 29, it says that Dr. Marie Stopes, who is the UK's equivalent of Margaret Sanger, she's been the great advocate of birth control in the UK. She was also opposed to abortion. So these it's a bit like the founding fathers or the founding mothers, if you like, of feminism, are actually opposed to the radical agenda which the modern feminists have.
Right.
But this demonstrates something which has been said many times by the pro-life people, that contraception does not prevent abortion; it leads to abortion.
Right.
It doesn't seem like it's really connected, But the fact is, if you're against having children, you think that sex, can be had without being open to life, and then you try birth control or contraception. Well, it doesn't work. Then what do you do then? Well,
and that's exactly the reasoning that the Supreme Court used in Roe versus Wade. That's in the opinions.
Yeah.
That very logic. And so
I would say one thing too. I'm obviously delighted to learn that Margaret Sanger and Marie Stopes are opposed to abortion, but they weren't opposed to the Nazi Party. They supported the Nazi Party's eugenics program. So the point is, that this whole contraception thing, they were still wrong-headed. But the point is that even people as wrong-headed as Marie Stopes and Margaret Sanger opposed abortion. What does that say?
Right. Exactly. exactly.
Let me throw, this is like Paris, the apple being thrown, whatever it was in the Greek mythology here. Because one of the things she does is show the roots of the feminist movement in Christian women in the United States and in Britain, England, excuse me, Joseph, and that they were fighting for women's suffrage. And that was a big thing. But Joseph, the man behind you, G.K. Chesterton, was an opponent of women's suffrage. How do you defend him on that?
Well, thank you for the attempted curveball. I mean, first thing I would say is that I don't advocate that everybody supports everything G.K. Chesterton says. I've had my differences with him. I've argued with him in print. But in his defense here, his argument was really that politics is a dirty, smutty place that belongs in the gutter and that women are too good for it. Right? He wasn't saying women are not good enough for politics. He was saying politics is not good enough for women.
Exactly right. And when I defend him, Joseph, on that point, I say the same thing, that also what he was defending was the family being the unit of society rather than the autonomous individual. And so it really should be kind of one family, one vote, right? Now we know that society being what it is, that would as a policy end up being unjust to women who are unmarried or their marriages have broken up or whatever, and now they have no say. But his point that really to be the citizen that votes, that's also the citizen who's the executioner. That's also the citizen who goes to war, and that these activities are against a woman's nature. And it's a compelling argument, even if in practice I wouldn't want to apply it.
Well, the way that I described it in the past is that Chesterton is guilty not of trying to keep women underfoot, but of placing them on a pedestal. And I'm saying that women don't want to be on that pedestal, and they shouldn't be on that pedestal. So let's take them down from that pedestal and give them the vote. But the point is, the pedestal is not the same thing as the gutter.
That's right. And also, I mean, he thought that what was done within the home was more important than what was done outside the home.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, where should we go from here? Well, back to the family. Her expose of Betty Friedan also is very helpful. You know, Betty Friedan, who wrote The Feminine Mystique, and saw all of this ennui among educated upper middle class women in America in the post World War II period. And I think that and Betty Friedan diagnosed this problem as that women didn't have meaningful work. You know, they had all these labor-saving devices in the home. Their children were in school. Their husbands were commuting to work. There they were left alone in suburbia without anything meaningful to do. And especially a college-educated woman like Friedan. But I just love Ellen's, where is it? That line where she says that she misdiagnosed this problem. You know, that's really a form of spiritual bankruptcy if you don't know what to do with yourself, you know, if you don't have a sense of purpose. And the fact that she put this on total, you know, basically the Marxist idea of total work, that man's made for work, not work made for man, was
it's reductionism of the human person to the person is a worker.
Yes.
In other words, a cog in the economy, not a fully human person. And that was Betty Friedan's mistake. She was a Marxist, and she was right to point that out. I love also, now again, the Nazi thing, she reminds Betty Friedan and us and Marxists generally that the phrase "work will set you free" is what the Nazis put above the gates of Auschwitz. You know, work does not set you free. Not in it. May be a component of it, but it's not it.
Well, here's on page 32 at the bottom. Author says, for Betty, the solution to the nameless problem was work. Quote,
yes.
The only way for a woman, as for a man, to find herself, to know herself as a person, is by creative work of her own. What irony! What could be more creative than bearing a child?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And she
Well-
said there is, and she, to complete that quote there, Father, there is no other way. In other words, that's it in toto. It is
That's right.
totalitarian,
Yeah.
right? That is the total. It's nothing outside it. But then also the next page, and this I do love Sue Ellen Browder for the way she encapsulates. So
Yes.
what's the consequence for all this? Page 33. Here we are 50 years later, suffering from the after effects of an overly sexualized, work-focused form of feminism that's left women treated as sex objects, unborn babies discarded like Dixie cups, and working mothers feeling so stressed and time pressured that the notion of becoming completely developed in every way sounds like a fairy tale. I mean,
Yes.
brilliant.
Yes. And back to Chesterton, he might be in What's Wrong with the World.
Yes.
He talks about how women think that work is going to set them free and give them creative outlets. He said, what's more creative than a woman making her soup a different way every day?
Right.
Running her own household and deciding what to do in it however she likes, as being sort of the queen of her home. And he says, whereas the average man, you think putting one brick on top of the other, row after row after row, is creative, or adding up a ledger of numbers and making them balance is creative. These are tedious jobs. But
the two other quotes by Chesterton on that I like. He says, how can it be a big job for a woman to teach other people's children the rule of three, and a small job to teach her own children about the cosmos?
yes.
I mean, marvelous, right?
Right.
And then the other one I like is, 1,000 women stand up as a man and say, we will not be dictated to, and then became stenographers.
Yes, that's brilliant. It's really great. So I am very forgiving when it comes to G.K. Chesterton and his position on the woman's vote, really, because he's so brilliant at understanding this, at the meta level, what all this means to be a man, to be a woman, and work in these things. And he's really quite a cure to radical feminism, I think.
So maybe sometime in the future, Joseph, we should take What's Wrong with the World as a book to discuss.
Oh, that'd be fun.
I'd love to do that.
It's amazing how contemporary he is.
Oh, yes.
And fun to read. I want my last quibble for today's session anyway, in talking about the great work of the real feminists at the beginning. She mentions Alice Paul, and then who later drafted the Equal Rights Amendment,
right,
which Sue Ellen Browder seemed to take as a very positive thing. But I was still alive at the time when that was being debated very vigorously, and it was Phyllis Schlafly, God bless Phyllis Schlafly,
yes,
who stopped that thing,
yes,
one state short of approval. So I mean, I think that the idea of women having equal rights and equal dignity is quite good, but this leveling down of egalitarianism is harmful to the soul.
Well, and to see the proof of that, all we have to see is what's happened to women in the military, and how, little by little, chipping away at the distinction between what men and women should do in the military, and this push to put women in combat roles. And that was one of Schlafly's main arguments, Father, against the ERA, was that this would mean women being drafted. This would, you want absolute equality? This is what it will look like. I'm afraid those arguments of hers would not be nearly as compelling today, because I think a lot of people have accepted this kind of radical egalitarian view of the sexes.
I think the bigger issue with the ERA is that it's a one-size-fits-all big government solution to a problem that needs to be worked out within families and within local communities, and not just using the sledgehammer to crack the nut. That's the problem.
Yes, one size fits all is usually not a good fit. So this going on to chapter 2, are we ready to go to chapter 2 now?
Good, I was just going to do that. Thank you, you women's intuition.
Yeah, I was going to mention Simone de Beauvoir, but we've done that. So
Yeah.
All right.
we can get over that now and go on to chapter 2. Yeah.
Woman as a sexual animal.
Yes.
Tell
So,
me about
yes.
it. Explain that to me. No, go ahead.
Well, this Alfred Kinsey,
Oh,
what a monster. And the fact that his so-called scientific studies of the sexual behavior of human beings set into motion so much acceptance of sexual aberration, and still we're suffering from it because still people quote Kinsey, still people use his numbers to defend all kinds of sexual perversion.
I mentioned, that I was ignorant of the United States history prior to when I moved here in 2001. And this was an example. Obviously, I knew who Alfred Kinsey was. I knew vaguely Dr. Sex stuff and what a lot of nonsense it was. But what I didn't know until reading this book was how flawed his so-called scientific evidence was.
Yes.
Basically, the whole thing is just a bunch of lies, a bunch of propaganda, and by any stretch of the imagination, these were not objective statistics.
That's right.
and yet this became the prevailing wisdom, of our country. Everybody looked at this as if it was science,
Yes.
Right. Even though genuine scientists, and she quotes several of them, genuine scientists actually showing in a really meticulous, authentic scientific way the flaws in his research. And it's because if the media are hearing what they want to hear, they don't bore them with the facts, right?
That's right. That's right. And of course, it dovetailed with other social, cultural rumblings that were going on. The Rolling Stones didn't have to read Alfred Kinsey to start producing the music they were producing, but it was a perfect storm of certain social pushback, and now comes along this man of science supposedly giving people the rationale for it.
Actually, Kinsey predates the Rolling Stones, because I don't know anything about the history of the United States, but I know about the history of the Rolling Stones. I know what that says about me. But the Stones were basically started in about 62, 63. Kinsey was about 10 years earlier. So I would actually argue that Alfred Kinsey's research did lay the foundations for the sexualizing of rock music. And it made it much easier for the likes of Mick Jagger to swim in that polluted sea.
Okay, well, what about the rock and roll that started much earlier than that?
Well, even the earliest rock and roll.
Oh, that
really,
was good. I can sing those. I can sing those songs for you. They're all good.
Yeah.
You ain't
Wanna
nothing but
rock
a
around the
hound
clock. 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Rock. Go ahead.
I said you ain't
Right.
nothing but a hound dog, Father. I've been telling you that for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Elvis began in 1954. Alfred Kinsey was 1953. Now, I'm not making a direct correlation, obviously, and certainly hillbilly music, which goes back earlier than Kinsey, the 1940s, is also up-tempo, sort of proto rock and roll, and a lot of it's about the stuff that Kinsey talks about sex, not drugs, but sex.
Right. So I was, and she actually makes this point too, that there were other forces at work. It's just unfortunate that this man got accepted as a scientist, and as she says, here's one of these scientists, this is page 47, British anthropologist Geoffrey Gorer, declaring about how bad his sampling was and called his work propaganda masquerading as science.
Yep.
And yet there was a feature film made on him recently, lionizing him as some kind of hero, and still this guy is around. He just won't go away.
Well, look at this.
The coming of Hugh Hefner.
Well, yeah, we'll get to him in a minute, God help us. But the bottom of page 46, again, for the volume on men, Kinsey and his team took sexual histories from about 1,400 imprisoned sex offenders.
I know.
No.
Can you believe it?
several hundred male prostitutes.
Yeah,
So I mean, again, I mean, he was deliberately cooking the books. The
That's
people
right.
he was asking were not ordinary people.
that's right. And you remember for a while there, the homosexual rights movement had that 1 in 10, like
Right.
1 out of every 10 men supposedly has homoerotic tendencies or something or behavior. That number came from Kinsey, that 1 out of 10. Well, yeah, if you're if you're surveying imprisoned men of any kind, but never mind sex offenders,
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
I mean, if one-tenth of his sample are male prostitutes, there's your answer.
Yeah, exactly. There's your 1 out of 10 right there.
Right.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Again,
Yeah.
one thing I do like, though, again, how she encapsulates the consequences. Bad ideas have bad consequences. So right at the beginning, after introducing Kinsey and his research on page 43, she says, this false construct, in turn, has led to massive upheavals in relationships between men and women, as well as fear of motherhood, millions of abortions, a multi-billion-dollar porn industry, widespread sexual harassment, and a divorce culture so brutal that it's left many young adults terrified to get married.
Yes.
I mean, again, the way that she basically says, well, that's a bad idea. Look at the consequences.
Yeah.
That's true, but even with all his fraudulent activity and self-promotion and so on, he could not have become so widespread, in such a widespread way popular, if there weren't a popular culture that wanted to hear that was susceptible to that and was hoping for something like that,
That's
Well, I
right.
mean, yeah, that goes back farther. The Spanish Civil War, the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution. There's always this element in society that does not like the taboos, that wants to be able to do exactly what they want, and a lot of the anti-clericalism throughout human history is rooted in this fundamental desire to escape from the teachings, particularly the sexual teachings of the Catholic Church. So yeah, there's always that there. Then you get some pseudo-scientists coming along giving facts, then these people jump on it and run with it.
Right.
So what should we be taking for next week, Joseph?
So for next week, we will be looking at the middle part of the book, and I've actually got the exact chapter numbers here. So it'll be chapters 3, 4, and 5 and 6. Chapters 3 to 6.
All right. So we will see you all next week. Thanks for joining us at the Reformed Book Club.